right, I'm fixing to go over all of the materials that we'll need for the February Cuties table topper. I just want to let you know that I have the kit that came from my girlfriend's quilt shop, and the kit includes, it gives you a little packing list here, the front, the binding, the backing. It does not include the pattern, and it comes with the embellishments. And the pattern is in the book. That the book is the pattern, and the book has a CD in it, and that has your embroidery designs on it. The embellishments that come in the kit are pieces of clear vinyl. There's like a mint, there's a purple, a really light purple, there's a pink, there's a clear, and there is like a light chiffon orange. So these are going to go over the little hearts in the corners on the triangles in the pattern. When you are looking at the book, up here in the materials page on page 6, it will tell you the stabilizers that you need. You need a light mesh cutaway stabilizer, and it has an orange square with a pair of scissors, and that it's kind of a burnt orange, and that burnt orange matches the label on the light mesh cutaway embroidery stabilizer. It also needs the fusible backing, which is the green with a heart, and that green matches the green. Here's the fusible backing, okay? And then the batting that you need has a darker green with a little heart, and here is the batting. As we go through here, down here at the bottom it says embroidery thread colors. Now it doesn't tell you what colors to use. You can match your own color threads to these. It doesn't give you numbers or a brand or anything. So you would choose whatever you have on hand that matches this. Or if you're not using the kit, all right, then what they do over here on page 7 is they give you a picture inventory of all of the fabrics that come in the kit so that yours will look exactly like this. Well, what you can do is, if you didn't get the kit, you can go through your stash and match all of these fabrics, and then you would match your thread colors to the fabrics that you have chosen. So you've got some options here. So I went through mine. I have a mixture of Dimes Exquisite. I am using a spool of Glide, and I have a spool of Isacord. So they're all 40 weight rayon threads, and they will all work just fine. When they go through here and they talk about, for instance, up here it says the purpose of this fabric is deck of cards backgrounds. Now, what they mean by deck of cards. So in the quilting world, this block is actually called a card trick block. So this is 4 different hoopings right here. And then we have the inner border, which is more narrow. We have the triangles. There's the 4 triangles. And then we have the outer borders. And there are 4 cornerstones. Okay? That's what makes up this entire topper. And then, of course, the backing and binding as well. So here on page 6, it talks about center, and it lists fabric 1 background, and then fabric 2 card 1, fabric 3 card 2. How you know which one goes where, what's fabric 1, what's fabric 2 for centers, and then it does the same thing here with the triangles, and it gives a whole list of fabrics for this. Now over here it doesn't say fabric 1, fabric 2, but it does give you the purpose. In the second column it gives you the purpose of this particular fabric. So it was easy for me to go through here and take a look. You might want to stop the video. I'll hold this real still. You might want to stop the video and go through your pattern and mark yours the same. I either have a C for center, fabric 1, or I'll have a T for triangle, fabric 2. And I went through here and matched up which fabric goes in which part. So this one will tell you that, for instance, this purple right here, Sweet Talk, Heart 4. So this heart is on one of the triangles. So I came back over here to the triangles and I looked up heart 4 is fabric 5. So that's why it says Sweet Talk heart 4 triangle fabric 5. And this matters because in the directions it's going to tell you use fabric 2, fabric 3, fabric 4, etc. So if you're not sure which fabric, there's kind of a matching back and forth between the two pages of the materials and the list of fabrics. On the next page, you will get a cutting diagram to tell you how to cut the fabrics. You have one directional fabric. If you got the kit, it is the horizontal stripe, and then it shows you how to cut your fabrics for your 4 little hearts. Now, I did not have the exact thread color that it talked about in here for this last color, but I did go through and take the fabrics themselves, and I was able to match a thread to that orange, and that's the 4th heart there. So you might wonder, should I pre-wash my fabrics? I do not, but these are quilt shop quality fabrics, and therefore I trust the color fastness of them. If you did not buy your fabric in a quilt store, you might on your reds, your deeper reds, you may want to give them a vinegar bath. Fill a gallon bucket of water with a cup of vinegar and let the fabric soak in it overnight, and then take it out, rinse it, and let it dry in the morning. I don't recommend putting it in the dryer because then they fray. The very first stitch design in these centers begins with putting down part of the card trick block, or the deck of cards they call it here in the book. You have to put down your stabilizer and your background fabric first. In the hoop, you want to center all that up and center it in the hoop. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute, but you're going to want to do that first. This particular design does not have like a placement line for batting and the fabric and whatnot, unless you are doing the block by block quilting. This is the background quilting that I will be doing, and it also gives you a list of thread colors to use for the background quilting. Now, I am not going to be doing the background quilting in this dark red on the cornerstones. I'm going to use a light pink for that. If you are not doing the background quilting, then you would start on the step with me after this is done, and I will tell you when we are going to do that. If you are going to do the background quilting, then you can follow along with me to do that. I will link to the background quilting files below. There are 2 different size designs on the CD. There is a 5x7 and a 6x10. I will tell you that the 5x7 and 6x10 designs are absolutely identical, except the 6x10 has a 1/4 inch allowance on either side vertically of the block. Otherwise, they are exactly the same. The background quilting is the same. Both of the inner blocks stitch at a 5x5. The 5x7 finishes at a 5x5.5, and the 6x10 finishes at a 5.5 by 5.5. You're not losing any of the dimensions. The block on the 6x10 is not bigger than the block on the 5x7. They both stitch the same. It is just for perhaps somebody doesn't have a 5x7 hoop, or somebody doesn't have a 6x10. All it is the margins are a little bit different, and those get sewn together, so you really won't notice a difference. I just wanted to go over that with you, and we are going to go ahead and get started on the little deck of cards, or the card trick block. We will sew 4 of them. I will do 1 of them in the single needle, and then the remaining ones I am going to do in the multi-needle. So I am pulling the fabric out of the kit for the center blocks, and the first one is the weave. That is center fabric 1, and then center fabric 2 is this one, and this is directional, so you need to pay attention to which way you cut this or which way you put it into the embroidery applique part. Fabric 3 is this one. It's kind of a red on a pretty salmon color print. Fabric 4 is the one, it looks like little flowers. And fabric 5 is a plain fabric. So I'm going to take these over to the ironing board, and it says to put this fusible woven on the back of all the fabrics. I don't know if I'm going to. I'm definitely going to put it on this fabric because this is the background fabric, but the rest of these are not going to have very dense quilting. This is very handy if you're going to have some dense quilting and it prevents tugging. To me, it's a little overkill to put it on all the fabrics. That was probably just the easiest way to do it for them in the instructions, but I don't necessarily see a need to put it on the back of all of these, but I am going to put it on the back of this. Now you need to notice, so like on this fabric right here, which is fabric 3, for the centers, we need 4 3.5-inch squares. So you might want to cut this first into the desired pieces that you have, because this is also used in the borders. All right, so that's completely up to you how you want to prep your fabric, just the whole thing at one time, or you can just cut away certain parts of it and do that. All right, so I am going to go put my fusible backing on the back of my background fabric, which is the weave, and iron these all out and get them ready. In the cutting guide on page 8, this fabric right here that's going to be used in the borders. So it shows the strips for the borders are 2.5. You need 4 of them, 2.5 by 18. And if you look at the fabric, you want to make sure you cut it. So if I turn it this way, let's see. It's exactly 18 inches this way. So I can cut it like that with the selvage on the end. Or if I cut it this way, it's more than 18. There is not a direction on this fabric either. So it doesn't matter which way you have it turned to cut it. You always want to iron your fabrics before you cut them, because right now you can see there are creases and whatnot, and it's difficult to get a correct measurement when there are creases in the fabric. So you definitely want to press your fabrics before you cut them. Now, I do not use steam on my fabrics. Some people do. I don't. I am of the belief that once a fabric becomes wet, even with steam, that the fibers will twist and reshape and they don't know what to do. So I do not use steam on any of my fabrics when I am in either quilting or machine embroidering. The background fabric needs 4 7.5-inch square blocks. So I am going to cut this at 15. I'm on 0 over here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this at 15. And then I'm going to cut it at 15 again. And the reason I'm doing this is to minimize the amount of fusible woven stabilizer on the back of this fabric. So I'm going to go put my fusible woven stabilizer on the back of this fabric. Okay, so I have got my woven fusible stabilizer adhered to the back of this fabric, and I did not use steam. I know the instructions say, some instructions say to use steam. I just don't. I just let the heat of the iron adhere it to it. And because it is already on the back of this, I just personally don't feel the need to go ahead and have to put it also on these little pieces of fabric, because the stitches are going through the background fabric as it is. This needs to be 4 7.5-inch squares. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. So here are my 4 7.5-inch squares. So here's my 5 by 7 hoop. I'm going to open it up pretty wide. And when I measure my stabilizer, I just lay the hoop, so like if this is the cut edge right here, I just lay the hoop right there. And just, I even cut this too big. I could have cut another inch or so off of this. Once you have your stabilizer cut to the size you want to go ahead and hoop the stabilizer. And we're gonna do what's called floating, okay? So I'm gonna tighten this up pretty good. And your hoop, you might want to recess it just a tiny bit, but you don't have to. Your hoop should have marks on it somehow for you to find center. If it doesn't, or you might have a grid for you to find center. You can take any kind of straight edge, and I even will use the lines on my cutting mat. I'll just line up the 2 points and go ahead and just draw a line. Doesn't have to be straight. So there's one. And then I'm going to line up these points with a line on the cutting mat, and I'm going to do this. So now effectively I have a crosshair on my stabilizer, okay? Now you want to do this with the fabric. You want to center the fabric on your stabilizer, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Once you have your fabric cut to your 7.5 inch square, just going to fold it in half and fold it in half again. You don't want to crease it, but you do want to get kind of into 4 quarters, okay? And then all you need to do is put this in this top quadrant and let it fold over, and then let it fold over. So now you have centered your fabric in your hoop. You can pin it if you want. You can take pins and pin the fabric to your stabilizer. That's one way to secure it. You can tape it if you want. You will use a lot of Kimberbell paper tape. You can tape it in if you want to, or I like to use Sew Tights magnets. I just prefer using these in my embroidery now. And I just kind of put it basically where I think it ought to go. And I like to use Sew Tights because it is so easy to hit a pin and not realize. It's just easier to put Sew Tights on, and that will hold it. And then what you can do is go to the back and you can move it over a little bit over to the edge. And the Sew Tights are nice and flat, and they will hold, and they won't come loose during the embroidery process. So I can put more. I guess I could put these in all 4 corners if I wanted to. But this is great. So now everything is nice and steady, and it's all gonna fit right here. And you can certainly do a trace on the design and make sure that it is not going to hit your magnet. So this is ready for the machine. Now the other fabrics, we need 4 of those, and let's see, we need 3.5 inch squares. So here are 3 of the fabrics cut. Like I said earlier, it does not matter which way this one is cut. I need 4 2.5 inch strips for the 18 inch borders, and this is cut to exactly 18. So I am going to just put it over here on the 0 line. Make sure it's up to 18. I'm going to cut it a little bit larger. So I'm going to cut it to 10.5 because 4 2.5 inch strips is 10 inches. I'm going to cut it to 10.5. So this piece is all I need for my outer borders. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to fold this in half, make it easier to deal with. And I'm going to cut a 3.5 inch strip. So now we are ready to go to the machine and stitch out our first deck of cards block. If you are doing the background quilting and you want to combine your two designs so that they are just one design, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to do that. This is in Brilliance Essentials, and I've already pulled in the background quilting design, and we can take a look at it here by clicking on the plus sign in the Objects panel, and we can see the batting placement line, batting tack down, fabric placement, fabric tack down, and final background quilting. According to the pattern book and instructions, the background quilting is done on top of the deck of cards applique. So I am going to come over to this other tab where I have the applique design in here, and I'm going to right click on it and copy, and then click over here and right click and paste. And you can see over here in the objects panel, now, this is still the background quilting. And here is the applique that I just pasted in there. In order for the background quilting to happen on top of the applique, not on the words, but on the picture, grab it and drag it up and hover it over the one you want it to be after. So I'm just going to grab a hold of it with my mouse and pull it up and hover it over the fabric tack down line right here. And then after this stitches all of this, you can see now the last stitch of the background quilting has switched to object number 3 instead of being part of object number 1. And then that will happen afterwards. So now you have the combined designs in the right stitch order.